Hello and welcome to the Yellow Chair Classroom. Today you will read the story of Trusty John, or you can say Faithful John. It's a German fairy tale which was collected by the Brothers Grimm and published in the Grimm's Fairy Tales in the year 1819. Andrew Lang included it in the Blue Fairy Book too. Let's go to the story. Once upon a time, there was an old king. This king had a servant who was so devoted to him that he was called John the Faithful. On his deathbed, the king left John in charge of his small son. "My faithful John," he said, "you must look after my son as you have looked after me. Only you know the secrets and treasures of my kingdom. Only you can help him. But promise me that he'll never see the portrait of the princess of the Golden Dome. If he does, he'll be in great danger. I put my trust in you. Goodbye, my faithful John." With these words, the old king died. Sadly, John made his promise. He put out the candles by the bed and crept from the room. As the boy grew up, John the Faithful carefully taught him the laws and the ways of the land and showed him how to be a king. They often explored the palace together from top to bottom. But John kept his promise to the old king. They never stopped at the room with the portrait. "You always forget this door, John," said the prince one morning. "Open it this time." No, your majesty," shuddered the old servant. "There's a great evil in that room, blacker than the blackest raven, sharper than a clawed monster, and faster than a winged dragon. Come away quickly." "Do you think I'm a coward?" cried the young man. "I shall fight this evil at once," and locked the door by order of the king. The faithful servant had to obey. Sword raised, the young king dashed into the room, but he found no evil, no raven, monster, or dragon. Instead, by the gleam of his sword, he saw a beautiful face gazing down at him from an oval frame of the wall. With a shaking hand, he reached out to touch the face, and then he fainted. He was carried to his bedchamber, where he lay ill for 3 days. At dawn on the 4th day, he awoke. "Oh, my faithful John, who is this lady in the portrait?" he begged straightway. "She is the daughter of the king of the Golden Dome," replied the servant. "But put her out of your mind, my lord. You are still weak." "I love her," cried the king, "and if all the leaves on the trees were tongues, they couldn't describe the sweetness of my love. I must marry her or I will die." The servant was troubled. He told the king that in the kingdom of the Golden Dome, anyone who spoke of love was immediately turned into a tree whose branches grew twisted and bore only dead leaves. The gardens of the king of the Golden Dome were filled with these strange trees. "The princess loves gold," he said. "Her goblets and plates and even her buckets and brooms are of solid gold. Tell your goldsmiths to fashion your gold into fine works of art. Then we'll fill a ship with these gifts, disguise ourselves as merchants, and sail off to the land of the Golden Dome. The princess will want to come abroad to see your treasures. We shall weigh anchor then and sail away with her far from that dreadful kingdom." This they did, and the plan succeeded. The princess loved gold so much that she seemed blind to everything. She laughed with delight at the birds, bowls, beads, and other beautiful gifts of pure gold which the prince showed her. While she was busy admiring them all, the handsome king slipped off his merchant's cloak and the princess saw who he really was. "When I saw your portrait, I fainted right to the ground," he said. At first, the princess was afraid, but the king was so young and handsome that she soon fell in love with him. Before long, the king's ship was sailing far out on the open sea. John the Faithful was standing on the deck when 3 ravens landed near him. "Hark, hark," said the first. "We have found the princess of the golden dome. She'll be dead within a week," said the second. "And so will the prince," added the third. "He'll see a horse as black as the night. He'll climb on its back and be carried forever around the heavens." "Or else," said the second, "he'll put on his wedding robe and disappear in a puff of smoke and flame." "The princess will die within a week," repeated the first raven. "She'll receive 3 drops of poisoned blood. Anyone who tries to save her will be turned to stone." Then they all flew off into a distance, crying, "Hark, hark, hark." Faithful John had understood the language of the ravens and was afraid for his master. He carefully considered what he would do. When the ship reached port, a magnificent black horse was waiting, prancing and snorting with impatience. Before the king could mount the horse, John leapt forward and slew the animal in an instant. There were cries of horror from the courtiers. "Let him be," cried the king. "He is John the Faithful, and I trust him." Arriving at the palace, the king was presented with a sparkling silver wedding robe on a golden tray. But as he reached for it, his servant threw him aside, snatched the robe, and flung it into the fire. By now, the courtiers were all grumbling and whispering about John. "Let him be," cried the king. "He is John the Faithful, and I trust him." The wedding celebrations then began with a great feast and ball. During the third dance, the beautiful bride grew pale and sank to the floor in a dead faint. On her shoulder were 3 drops of scarlet blood. Once again, John leapt forward. This time he sucked the deadly poison and spat it out. But at this, the king became jealous. "Throw him into prison," he cried. "Let me speak first, Your Majesty," begged faithful John. "Well," demanded the king. John told him all about the 3 ravens. As he spoke the last word of his story, John the Faithful turned to stone, but the young queen returned to life. The king and the queen wept bitter tears. They had the statue of the faithful servant placed in their bedchamber. Whenever they looked at it, they wept and cried, "Oh, forgive us, faithful John, how little we rewarded your loyalty." Some time later, the queen gave birth to 12 sons. They were a constant joy to her and the king. One day, while she was in church, the king was passing John's statue and cried out, "Is there anything I can do to bring you back to life?" To his amazement, the statue replied, "Certainly there is, if you are willing to sacrifice your children as I sacrificed myself for you." Sometimes later, the queen gave birth to 12 sons. They were a constant joy to her and the king. One day, while she was in church, the king was passing John's statue and cried out, "Is there something I can do to bring you back to life?" To his amazement, the statue replied, "Certainly there is, if you are willing to sacrifice your children, as I sacrificed myself for you." With a heavy heart, the king did as the statue asked. He went home and cut off the heads of his 2 children. Instantly, John's sprang to life before him. At that moment, the queen returned and, seeing the bodies of her sons, fainted with grief. But John the Faithful took the two heads, set them on the boys' shoulders, and the twins came back to life. The queen recovered, and they all lived happily together for the rest of their lives.